want to go back to Florida right now, where we find meteorologist Mike Seidel. He's standing by in Clearwater. And Mike, sunny day today for the most part. Some isolated storms in the forecast. It looks like you're in Tampa. How widespread was the flooding around the Tampa Bay region?
It wasn't very widespread. It was these areas susceptible to the surge. We had a 4-foot surge. We're here at the Causeway at Whiskey Joe's restaurant, and this is the bay looking over towards 275. Yesterday morning, when we left the second floor to get out of the parking lot, the waves were breaking right about here, and the water was still coming up. So you can imagine the force of the water. It doesn't take much water just to float a car. So this is the outdoor bar, huge tiki structure, which is fine. But the bar basically has been broken into many sections and moved in different places. You can see the lines for the beverages here. So just a big pile of debris. The porta potties over there have been twisted and turned. Some are sideways, which is surprising because there's not much room or space in there. Some of the damage over there, there's a tiki hut over there that's on its side. Some of the tiki huts have floated away, and there's a lot of debris over there, not easy to see against the wall over there, the jetty. So a lot of cleanup. Whoa, look out, I just hit a low spot. A lot of cleanup here. We're going to talk to the general manager of Whiskey Joe's coming up at 5:20 Eastern in about 15 minutes. And we're going to walk around, and he's going to assess the situation with us. And he's been through five of these, Chris. And he's going to talk about, was this the worst one he's been through out of 5 tropical events, coming up here in about 15 minutes on the Weather Channel. Chris?
All right, we look forward to that update. Thanks so much, Mike.
You're looking at Horseshoe Beach. This is the Big Bend of Texas, the hardest hit area from the hurricane, Idalia. Yesterday morning, the surge values were predicted at 8 to 12 feet, and no doubt they did top out over 8 feet. We don't have an official measurement. They'll have to go down there, the Weather Service, and just take a look at how high the water got. We know over in Cedar Key, it went up to about 6.5 feet. And back here in Tampa, we had a surge of just over 4 feet, the highest they've seen on that gauge since the early 90s. That's as long as this gauge has been around. And I want to bring in a gentleman who's been out here for 15 years. This is Marty Duffany, the brand manager of Whiskey Joe's. A great place to be.
Yep.
Yesterday was not the best time for Whiskey Joe's.
No.
But let's talk about how many storms you've been through and how this rated.
So this is overall the worst storm that we've had damage-wise, but this is probably the 5th or 6th time that we've had water damage and some structural damage to the restaurant, mostly the tiki bar.
Now, you told me you put in this seawall back in January. How did that help with the restaurant?
Well, that seawall was put in to help the beach erosion and protect the pillars that are holding the concrete slabs, because you could see how far up above we are above the land. So I think it did everything it was supposed to do, especially with the surge we had, Mike.
And the restaurant is fine.
The restaurant is fine, yeah. Nothing was wrong.
Yeah, people were there already.
We opened at 11 o'clock today.
There you go. Now, we're going to show you video. We shot that from up there on the top of the steps, Rodney Hall, yesterday around 5 a.m. We were shooting this tiki hut, all the tiki huts, and you'll get an idea of the surge at that point. It hadn't even gotten to 4 feet plus, but the wave action going over these tiki huts, and some of them have floated away. And did you lose any, or are they somewhere on the property?
Yeah, they're all scattered. We got 3 of them down there, and one you could see is up against here. So we had 19, and this is what we have left.
But the big impact here was at the outdoor bar. The structure itself is solid.
Right. Yeah, the structure itself is solid. This was built by Native Indians in Florida, so you could see what a great job that held up from the wind. But the storm surge, Mike, I've never seen it like that before, and it just destroyed everything in here.
We left about 6:30 because of safety reasons, and the bar was intact. Right. But it goes to show you the power of the water. Yeah, you only need about a foot of water to float a car, but you can see what happened. We had a rectangular bar here.
Sure.
We showed it was in the background of our shots 2 days ago, and now it's just gone. And you had to cut the power out here for safety.
Yeah, power's cut, and everybody's safe down here now. Tomorrow we'll have construction crews. We'll have it cleaned out, and we're looking to start building as soon as possible and be done in about 6 weeks. But we'll be temporary up until then. Tampa Bay and Whiskey Joe's is such a great place. We can't keep our guests away, so we're going to do everything we can before the Labor Day weekend to get us open in some capacity.
You'll have some kind of a temporary
bars
place out here.
Yeah, and I've got 195 employees here. I got to keep them working. So
yeah, we ran into one of the servers who works out here, and I jokingly said, "What are you going to do?" And you said, "We got a temporary bar coming in."
That's right. So we've been through it before. We're experienced at this. I mean, we live in Tampa. We live in a great place. And unfortunately, sometimes we got to deal with hurricanes, and we'll clean it up and get it ready for the public.
Well, I appreciate your time out here.
Thanks,
you're
Mike.
positive.
Yep.
You'll get this rebuilt. And can I give a shameless plug?
Absolutely.
Chris, Dr. Knapp, can I do this? I had your grouper sandwich here
The
2
best
days
in
ago.
town.
Oh, my gosh.
Thanks, Mike.
I've had a lot of grouper sandwiches in my time. I say without hesitation, the best grouper sandwich I've ever had.
And I'll let Heather, Mike, executive sous chef, know, because she'd really appreciate that comment.
It was great. We all had grouper. Thanks again.
Appreciate
Good luck.
it.
Dr. Knapp, Chris Bruin, you can see even a 4-foot surge basically has totaled everything except the hut. They'll rebuild. They'll be back online temporarily here in a day or so, as he said, before Labor Day weekend. But the seawall obviously came into play and helped them out with that surge, and the main restaurant, which is open for business right now. Guys, back to you in Atlanta.
Now let's work our way back towards the south, where, of course, we saw some of the impacts there in Florida. Mike Seidel there in Tampa. And, Mike, that's an area where the system itself, the core, stayed well to the west, but that did not mean we didn't find ourselves dealing with many problems.
Yeah, the issue here was not rainfall. We had 2 to 3 inches, and it didn't come all at once. The issue here was the surge. And why I'm standing here is I wanted to just tell you, vicariously, it's just unbelievable how warm this water is. It's in the upper 80s, and got a lot of horseshoe crabs in the water. They're all over the place, enjoying a little swim here this evening here on the beach. Let me show you what happened yesterday morning as the winds came southwest off Tampa Bay here at the Whiskey Joe's restaurant on the causeway. Now, they built this back in January. This used to be a beach, but with the rising water levels and all the erosion, they put this in January. And we talked to Marty Duffany, who's the brand manager here, and he told me that really helped save the restaurant. The restaurant is fine. They're open for business, and that's great. But with that said, we were up there where that gentleman is there right now yesterday morning around 5 a.m., 4 to 6 a.m. Then we had to leave because the surge came too high. But at that point, the water was up above the top of the Tiki Hut tables, and what is left there, the bar, is just basically flattened. That is all going to be cleaned up tomorrow. They're going to rebuild. They hope to have a whole new bar set up in about a month. We'll have a temporary bar by Saturday. It is Labor Day weekend. He's got over 150 employees, and this is a very, as you can imagine, a very busy, hopping place here on weekends this time of the year. But luckily, no injuries. This can be replaced. The restaurant is fine, and that's how they do the storm surge here at this particular location. The surge was just over 4 feet at the old Tampa Bay port gauge. Keep in mind, even though that's the highest on record, their records only go back about 30 years. So, Chris, Dr. Knapp, it was certainly all about surge here in Tampa. The peak wind gust was 53 miles an hour, and not a whole lot of power outages here in Hillsborough County. But schools are open today. The airport's up and running, almost everything going in and out. And we're back to the heat index, Chris, of almost 110 this afternoon. Thank goodness for the breeze.
Yeah, that sounds good, Mike.
Jim Cantore will have his full interview with Governor DeSantis here in Florida. They were over there in Cedar Key where Jim was live for the storm, and that will come up at 7 Eastern, 7 o'clock Eastern, the entire 9-minute interview where they talk about what happened, what they're going to do, and they take a walk around and look at the damage. Look at this damage here. This is at Whiskey Joe's on the Causeway here in Tampa, if you're familiar with the area, here in the Tampa Bay area. And they got hit pretty hard. You can see here, this was the bar. This was a rectangular bar just like this, and it's in pieces. But as the brand manager, Marty Duffany, told me, it was built to be like this, to break away, and that's how it will be rebuilt, because that way you don't have things running into each other, and that's what's going to happen. They're going to start the rebuilding process, the cleanup process tomorrow. And he talked earlier about getting this up and running as quickly as possible.
Power's cut, and everybody's safe down here now. Tomorrow we'll have construction crews. We'll have it cleaned out, and we're looking to start building as soon as possible and be done in about 6 weeks. But we'll be temporary up until then. You know, Tampa Bay and Whiskey Joe's is such a great place. We can't keep our guests away, so we're going to do everything we can before the Labor Day weekend to get us open in some capacity.
You'll have some kind of a temporary
bars
place out here.
Yeah, and you know, I've got 195 employees here. Wow. I got to keep them working. So
15 years here. He's been here running the operation, and it's the worst storm he's seen. You know, Tampa has dodged more than a few over the past 100 years. There's one of the tiki huts on its side. They're going to come out here and clean up the beach and get the sand back in place, too, in the next few days. But they will be up and running out here in a temporary space for Labor Day weekend. So all things considered, not horrible. The restaurant itself is up on stilts. They put in a new seawall in January. That helped out, and the restaurant is already open and running for business as of 11 a.m. this morning. So Chris and Dr. Nab, obviously it was all surge issue here in the Tampa St. Pete area because of the surge, not the wind per se. The wind gusts here in Tampa are running at about 53 miles an hour, the peak gust in this area. So that really isn't going to knock down a lot of power lines and cause a lot of structural damage. But the water damage here, right here on the bay in this place, is significant.
Yeah, we appreciate it. There were a lot of neighborhoods.
All right, well, let's get back down to Florida in Tampa. That's another area that felt some of the impacts from this system. That's where we find our very own Mike Seidel. Mike?
Hey, Alex, good evening here from Tampa and Tampa Bay. And here it was all about the surge, not so much about the wind. The peak winds were running generally 50 to 55 miles an hour. Not a whole lot of power outages, and just about everybody has their power back on. But this is Whiskey Joe's on the Causeway. You may have been here for a beverage or a great piece of grouper. And this is the outdoor bar, the huge tiki hut structure built by Indians. It is in great shape. The problem is the bar is in bits and pieces. It was built that way. So this is going to be cleaned up tomorrow, and they're going to haul it away and start the rebuilding process. But I want to show you what was going on here. This is about 5:30 yesterday morning. We were going live upstairs on the second floor deck, looking down at these tiki huts, and the surge at that point hadn't maxed out yet at 4 feet. It was about 3 feet and change, so it got about a foot higher, but you can see the waves breaking over the tables on the tiki hut, and boy, that force of water did all this in just a few hours. So there you go. Chris Bruin, it was the surge here, but not a lot of residential, little if any residential damage. We did have some water in the homes out on the barrier island, like at Clearwater Beach on the north side. Primarily there, the sand and the water in the homes was on the bay side. Now we're getting the outflow from another storm that's across the bay, Chris, and it's feeling nice and cool, or at least cooler. Chris?
Yeah, it's crazy what the difference 85 or 88 degrees will feel like compared to 95 or 98 degrees. Thanks for that update there.
And fortunately, the worst has long passed Florida, but the cleanup continues up there in the Big Bend down to Cedar Key here in Tampa. Basically, it was all about the surge off the bay. Winds gusting in the low to mid 50 mile per hour range. Didn't do much damage, little if any power outages in comparison to what we've seen and what we still have up there between the Big Bend and in South Georgia and Southeast Georgia. We're back here at Whiskey Joe's on the Causeway. The bay came in early yesterday morning as the wind went southwest, and this was all underwater. Basically, where I'm standing, the water was about this deep. The surge officially was just over 4 feet. This seawall was built just last January, and we talked to the brand manager here at the restaurant, and he said it did its job.
That seawall was put in to help the beach erosion and protect the pillars that are holding the concrete slabs, because you can see how far up above we are above the land. So I think it did everything it was supposed to do, especially with the surge we had, Mike.
Okay, and what he told me, Marty told me, it really helped keep this restaurant intact. This is the main restaurant. It's back open for business as of lunchtime today. Here's the outdoor bar, the huge tiki structure intact. Some of the tiki huts have been moved and by the wind and the water, primarily the surge. And this is what the bar was. It was rectangular. It's in bits and pieces now. They're going to start the cleanup process tomorrow, Chris and Dr. Nab, and hope to have a new bar in about a month, but a temporary bar just in time for Labor Day weekend. So, again, the bottom line in this area was all about the surge. Wind was not a major issue, and certainly not flash flooding. I don't even think we had one flash flood warning. 2.5 to 3 inches of rain fell, but Dr. Nab, it came in spurts with those outer bands and then the closer in bands. So we didn't take the brunt of the rainfall like they did near the eye wall and certainly up in parts of the Carolinas and Georgia.
Yeah, thank you, Mike Seidel. You know, Chris, it was the stronger winds offshore that were pushing all that water into the Gulf Coast of Florida.
Yes, indeed, and this is what's left of the bar out here at Whiskey Joe's. And it's not much. It's built to break into pieces. It was a big rectangular bar. They're going to start cleaning up tomorrow morning. But that 4-foot-plus surge came rolling in here early yesterday morning as the winds came around on the backside of the hurricane from the southwest and piled the water up here. We were here yesterday morning. Let me show you the wave action that we shot. This is about 5 to 5:30 in the morning, and the surge at that point was about 3 feet. But look at the waves crashing over the tiki hut tables. And, you know, this went on for hours until the surge started backing off late morning. And then even with that, we still had wave action as the water backed off. So quite a bit of damage outside the restaurant. Inside is fine, but they want to get those employees back to work.
That seawall was put in to help the beach erosion and protect the pillars that are holding the concrete slabs, because you could see how far up above we are above the land. So I think it did everything it was supposed to do, especially with the surge we had, Mike.
And Marty Duffney showed us all around here. They were going to come in here and rebuild. They'll have a new bar set up in about a month. But in the meantime, they'll go temporary because it is Labor Day weekend. The restaurant is fine because they built the seawall back in January, and it did its job. No, it didn't stop the water from coming in, but it did protect the pylons for the restaurant here on Tampa Bay. So, again, it was really the surge, not the wind. The peak winds here topped out in the 50 to 55 mile an hour range, and power outages were pretty minimal here on the Sun Coast. Much different story, obviously, Chris and Dr. Nab, as we went up to Cedar Key and in the Big Bend area where they took more surge and they had wind gusts. I think the peak wind I saw, guys, was 85 inland at Perry, but we may get a higher gust coming in, or you may have seen a higher one since I checked the data late yesterday.
Yeah, and of course, we probably didn't measure the strongest wind.